Hi, I'm Rachael, and if you're listening, you probably already knew that. You probably already knew that this is a podcast where I talk about 24 books suggested to me by people across my social media sites. You probably already knew that sometimes I do it with the guest, the person who suggested the book. Around the 14th, I'll be talking about Rachael by Garth Nix. Today's fortnightly suggestion came from my mum, who you will hear from in a moment. It's actually a book I've read before, so it feels like I'm cheating in a few different ways here. The Umbrella Academy by Gerard and Gabriel. This was a sort of off-the-cuff episode because my other book suggestion fell through, but in the end I'm really happy with the result. It's been a while since I've took a close read of the graphic novel, and even though I'm not much for rereading, I think of all the books I've done so far, this has the best rereadability factor. So, without further ado. It was the same year Tussling Tom Gurney knocked out the space squid from Regal X9. It happened at 9:38 p.m. It came from an atomic flying elbow.
Alright, so we're talking about the Umbrella Academy. Gerard and Gabriel?
Yeah, Gabriel probably.
Gabriel.
Since
okay.
He is
I think you spelled Gabriel the same.
I don't know if I've ever met a Gabriel, actually.
Or a Gabriel. Well, I've heard of a couple of Gabriels.
Well, I've met this Gabriel.
Nice.
Yeah!
That's exciting.
This is the comic book artist who I met and then told him that my mom really enjoyed his art.
I was just about to ask if he's the one who's thrilled to know that a aging, motherly, old person enjoys his stuff. Because
right.
Usually artists aren't too excited by that. But
first of all, we're all aging. Second of all, I believe...
He's probably my age.
Third, I think, you gotta kind of reframe that because, how great is it for somebody who's, 20 standing in front of you to say, oh, I really love your art, but also know that somebody who's, your age, let's say,
half dead,
to also be enjoying your art. So I think that that's really cool that he now knows that his art is touching people of many generations.
Can we talk about the cover art? Because that really drew me to this story, and I play a string instrument, and there is a string instrument playing a string instrument on this cover.
Well, you and I both play viola, so I think probably that's what drew me to this comic as well, because this isn't one that anybody suggested to me. This is one that I picked off the shelf myself when I first read this. And I thought that it was really a striking visual, even though it's, 3 colors.
I am drawn to black and white art over color many times because I think, okay, this sounds redundant, but color sometimes adds confusion. So you get your point across much more solidly, I think, sometimes without color. What year was this produced, I wonder?
July 2008. Oh, July. Well, almost exactly 11 years ago.
When the Umbrella Academy came to Netflix was when I became aware of it. Well, the first page of the book looks pretty interesting. There's a Kraken in a wrestling match with a human. I don't remember that in the TV show.
I believe that the first scene in the show is...
The swimming pool?
The swimming pool, yeah.
It's the very beginning?
Where she ends up having a baby, which can be really unsettling for a person who has no idea what's going on. And also for anybody who knows what's going on.
Or for anyone who ever goes in a public pool.
Never doing that again.
Anyone who ever had a baby.
Yep, probably never doing that.
Yeah, there was a lot going on emotionally in that opening. Mm-hmm. And this is the very next page of the book. And it's pretty striking here because there's a baby laying on the floor of the tube station of the actual train with its umbilical cord and body fluids still all over it. So why didn't that put you off when you turned the first page of this book?
When I say that I'm a fan of My Chemical Romance, I'm literally looking at a 2-record album that's sitting across my room. I thought that it was really weird. I loved the art style for it. I think that Gabriel does a fantastic job, and I'm a huge fan of everything that he does.
So, from my perspective, not being a real comics fan, I'm very interested in the history of comics and the artists and the art form and how it fit into society. But I didn't grow up looking at comics and trying to kind of get into it because you're interested. And the problem I always had with comics was the visual sort of onslaught of information. It's so much that it's hard for me to enjoy it. But I will say that the art in this is doable for me. And even some of the pages where it's not a lot, it's enjoyable.
Being able to read a comic is a real skill. To be able to follow the flow of a comic, to be able to understand everything that's happening on a page that the artist or creators are trying to get across to you is a real skill. And it's interesting to me as a person who works in a bookstore, whenever I have somebody asking for a suggestion for a book, depending on the age, sometimes I'll go straight for a graphic novel. And usually if it's a parent, they will immediately shut it down because it's not a real book. It doesn't have the amount of words that they want their kids reading, perhaps. But it is a real skill to be able to take in all of this information. I think when I reread this book, it took me probably about 10 minutes to chew through it because I just intake information and synthesize it so quickly. And that's definitely because I started reading comics at a younger age.
I'm a little disappointed to hear that parents haven't come around to the concept of different types of reading being valuable. Because when you're ingesting data of all kinds, as an engineer, say, you're reading in a different way than just words on the page as well. Come on, parents. Get with it. So here's a page I'm just flipping through as we're talking. I'm a big fan of the moon. I got to see the first astronaut walk on the moon. Against my own wishes, I wanted to go out and play, and was mad that my grandmother made me watch, but it's been something I've been able to brag about now for 56 years almost. Here's a panel. Am I using the correct term?
Yes.
Where there was a picture of...
His name in the TV show is Luther.
And the new series starts 2 days?
Oh my god, I wish.
No? I thought it was July 4th.
No, Stranger Things, the new series is starting July 4th.
Okay, another show that I really like.
This one, they just started filming season 2. I've been following the guy who plays Diego. I've been following him on Instagram, and he has been posting some shooting diaries.
And my favorite character in this series is the young boy, because he's like a man. And when he talks and walks and his dress and demeanor and persona and everything is very convincing that there's a man inside of that body.
I will say this. I really enjoyed Allison more. Sorry, Gabriel. I enjoyed her more in the TV show than in this comic. And I think part of that is because they have more time in the show to go deeper into, like, the psyche and the personality of each of the kids. I think if I, suddenly gave birth out of nowhere to a child just on the subway, and a guy appeared at my front door saying, I'm willing to give you millions of dollars to take this child from you, I would be like, please take this weird alien thing out of my house. I feel like I've won the lottery. This is your problem now.
Now I can afford psychological counseling.
The alternative, I feel like, is the government showing up at your house and saying, we are going to test on this baby. And I feel like I would be more willing to give it to a guy who shows up with money. Mm-hmm. Which sounds really awful.
Well, no, because you don't want weird experiments happening on this person.
That being said,
I don't trust the government.
I don't trust the government.
Anyone. Okay, so let's talk about Vanya. Vanya has been left out of all the fun. How does she feel about that?
From the point where she is made to forget about this superpower, the professor does everything that he can to make everybody else forget about it. He's very cruel about it, and the other kids kind of grow up to be a little bit cruel as well. Like, they have this internalized feeling that Vanya is very different from the rest of them and therefore just a little bit useless. In the end, she finds out about this power and she becomes so angry that she uses her ability to cause destruction. And the difference in the comic is that there is a group of people who are trying to put together a symphony. When played the right way, it will destroy the world. And Vanya, as a person who plays an instrument, is instrumental. And at first she turns them down. Later she comes back because of something that her siblings do. She's just so angry at him that she decides that she wants to destroy the world over it.
So music being the conduit to the end of the world is kind of interesting.
Music, for the most part, doesn't play a huge part in comics because it's
a visual medium.
Another comic that kind of does it well, though, is Watchmen. At the beginning of each chapter, have a little box that gives the name and artist for a specific song. All Along the Watchtower is in there. Hallelujah is in there. So it's interesting to have that song in the back of your mind or to be playing it while reading through and sort of experiencing these two things together.
When I'm depressed or worried, which happens, a lot in these times, I love to just immerse myself in a story and stories. And I know books, looking around this room that we're sitting in, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, books have been that for you, and that's great.
I think that there's definitely something to be said about the power of a good story and the power that a good story can have over you. I would say books, but also TV for me, movies, graphic novels, comic books.
And music. You're an all media kind of girl.
Can't make art to save my life, but throughout my life I've really been influenced by some incredible artists, and I'm very thankful for that.
I want to say that people who say I can't make art are wrong.
Well,
because you can. You can spray paint food color on a sidewalk and call it art and appreciate it and enjoy it, even if the rain comes and washes it away the next day. And you can grab a piece of clay and mold it into a worm or whatever you want. Anybody can do that and enjoy it. And I think what kills the joy of making art is insidious and incessant. And it happens when we're really young. And it's terribly sad that the tree has to look like a tree. Because Picasso's tree didn't look like a fucking tree. Everybody knows who he is. And he made a lot of money, and he had a great life, and he got to do what he loved to do most of all. And this is what I get to do in my job, because I work with special needs people, and we do art every day for the joy of it. And it's so fun. So if anybody ever hears this, go do some art, and don't judge yourself, and try to have a good time. And it doesn't have to sell, and nobody has to see it. And I hope you just try. The way I'm going to try to read comics, I want you to try to do art of any kind, because it can really enrich your life.
So I would give this book probably 10 out of 10 Rachels.
Wow.
Yeah, I would
give it...
That's
very high praise.
I would give it, although I've given a few books on this podcast.
You're a big book fan. But what is it? Why?
I love the artwork. I love the style. I love the content, the way that it's written, and what is written. I love the story. I think that it's very original and different from anything that I've ever gotten the chance to read. And if I had the chance to read this again for the first time, I absolutely would take it. I think it was really well done. I would also give the show 10 out of 10 Rachels, and that's harder for me to do because I am very specific when it comes to TV and movies. But
yeah, you are a discerning critic of your visual media. I mean, I think that's why we went out and bought pins.
That's true.
Because there's some things that I'm not ashamed of being a fan of. Everything I'm a fan of, I'm not ashamed of. I don't know. I'm embracing the whole fandom concept since probably 2009 when the Doctor Who series came out.
Oh, yeah,
and even though I was marginally aware of the Doctor Who program when I was growing up, this was my first real experience with being a part of a group fandom.
So how many Metas would you give for the show?
4 out of 4 umbrellas.
Four umbrellas. I like it. Why the number 4?
4-star restaurants?
Oh, sure.
4's the top.
That's valid. Yeah.
10's good too, but I tend to go for 4.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening this week. I hope you're rereading some classics in 2019. Happy New Year!
Okay, so 10 is the boy, right?
5 is
Sorry,
the boy.
5 is the boy. See?
There,
That's why I asked you.
there's only like 7 kids.
I'm gonna stop guessing.